Neil from Essex here today to talk to you about Kubota's new LX20 Series tractor. This new model has 13 improvements over the old model, and that is a very big deal. As new tractors are rolled out, as model years go by, you tend to see pretty small incremental changes. This one, though, has a long list of improvements. We're going to take some time today, walk around, and show you all the things that have been improved on this machine.
Essex, a helping hand with your land.
We always start when looking at equipment by taking a look at the model number, because there's usually a lot of information that's kind of encoded in those digits. In this case, this is an LX series machine. That's a reference to this size chassis. LX is a fairly new indicator for Kubota. This would be the same as Kubota's large B series tractors of years gone by. Think machines like the old B7800, the B3030, B3000. Anything in that series sits on effectively about the same size chassis as this one does. Although this is a biggest departure that I've seen from those machines here in a long time. 40 tells us the number of horsepower that this machine has, and this is a 40 horse machine here that I'm standing beside. There's also a 35 horse variant of this as well. Now we're going to expect for the next model year that there's probably going to be a 26 horse version of this as well. An LX20 more than likely is right around the corner for the next model year, but today we're selling its predecessor, the LX20 So this machine available in the future, 26 horsepower, but today 35 and 40. It replaces a machine that previously would have been 33 horse. It's the machine that I own, and 33 is a mistake, actually. We often look at these model numbers and kind of assume that they're always the exact engine horsepower. They're not. Sometimes there's some rounding involved. The prior model here in the LX3310 was actually 31 horsepower. So going from 31 to today 35 and 40, and legitimately 35 and 40 within some decimal rounding, is a pretty big upgrade from years gone by. And 40 horsepower in a tractor of this size is going to give you almost no limitations on what you're not going to do with a huge amount of power. Finally, our last two digits down here are the 20. Now the prior series that we were talking about, LX20 LX3520, that was the 10 series of the LX. The 20 is the series indicator, so that's incrementing up into the next family of tractors. When we go down the road here, maybe another 5 or 10 years, more than likely you're going to see a 30 down here. So that's how these model numbers are constructed. The LX being the family, the next two digits being the horsepower, the last two digits being the series or the iteration of that machine. Now, while the horsepowers for this model are new, the engine here is not. This is the same engine that would have been run in the LX3310 before. There's not new technology here, and everything in this machine has been very proven and trouble-free at this point. Now, you can see here, though, that it is creating a little bit more horsepower, right? And oftentimes that is the case where these engines are capable of a little bit more. The extra horsepower is coming from probably two different areas. A little bit of fuel would be my guess, but this one also runs at a little bit higher engine RPMs in that 40 horse model. So rather than running at around 2,500 RPMs, this one runs at 2,700 RPMs, which helps it produce the extra horsepower. We do see that added RPMs coming out in this machine in some other areas, so that might cost you a little bit of torque. But when we look at other parts of the machine here, because the internals are spinning a little bit faster than they used to, it also results in a little bit more hydraulic flow than what it used to. The second improvement on this tractor is a welcomed widening of the front axle by the tune of about 3 inches or so. The front tires on this one sit out a little bit wider than what the prior model did. That's going to give it a little bit better stability than the other tractors had. It is not unusual to hear complaints from owners of the current machine that they can feel a little tippy at time, particularly the model that has the glass cab on it. When you add all that additional weight up high, or maybe you're carrying your loader higher than what you should, these tractors can become a little bit tippy, and widening out the tires helps. So in this model now, the front axle is physically wider than the last model was. I also took my tractor and added wheel spacers to the back tires, pushing those out a little bit to help further. That's an additional kit that you can have installed on your machine that's going to give you a little bit added stability. And if hillsides are something that you're frequently conquering with your tractor, talking to your dealership salesperson about properly setting up your machine for hillside stability, there's a lot of levers that we can pull in order to make these machines feel a lot more planted. But this one's going to be a step easier than it used to be because of the wider front axle. Along with the new model tractor comes a new model loader. This is now the LA545, replacing the prior LA535. There's not a whole lot of changes here to this loader compared to the last model, but one notable one is that with the front axle getting wider, the loader is now able to be wider as well. So these arms are now spread out a little bit more compared to the prior model. One thing that will make easier is taking that loader on and off. Speaking from my personal tractor, when I take my loader off, it's pretty tight to drive the machine inside of those arms and not have a hydraulic hose or something scrape the side of my hood. With these arms spread out a little bit more, it's going to give you more room in order to get in and out. It should also give a little bit more stability, right? If you're pushing that loader in and out of a pile of dirt, you have a side load on there, widening the arms out should give a greater sense of stability to the structure of that loader. Kubota's LA545 now is a feature-rich loader in and of itself. We're usually going to have these coming through with skid steer couplers on them, and they use a traditional pin and parking stand design in order to take them off the tractor. But if you want to take those things a step further, there are some optional kits that can go on here. One of them is called Swift Attach, which will give a single lever coupler to drop all of your hydraulics off of the loader to make it a lot easier to remove without having to do each individual coupler. And also an available self-leveling kit. If you're doing a lot of work with pallet forks, the self-leveling kit will keep those forks level as that loader goes up and down, making it easier to manipulate your loads. You will find some people don't care for those kits when doing work with dirt buckets because they'd rather manually manipulate the angle of their buckets. So it's something that we tend to see a lot more with people doing heavy pallet fork work versus dirt work. While we're discussing a new loader, we should also point out that this one has a new brush guard on it, different than the brush guard from the prior model. This has bolts in it to enable you to install brush screens inside of the grill guard. This is proof that Kubota pays attention, right? The use of tractors has changed a lot over the years, and customers have taken a lot of the older machines that have been out there in the field, fitted them with things like third function kits, front grapples, and these compact tractors are being used for a lot more brush removal type work than they ever have been before. That kind of work lends itself to beating up the machine. In particular, running sticks, brush, you name it, in through the plastic guards up here in the front, maybe back into your radiator, potentially doing damage to your machine. We here at Messick sell our own custom line of screens in order to augment those older tractors and give that level of protection. But when Kubota does it here from the factory, their buying power allows it to be a lot less costly than having custom-made aftermarket things bolted onto your tractors. A brush screen can be bolted into these gaps. Wings can come back the sides here on your factory-equipped tractor in order to protect it from brush and those grapple applications. Next improvement on this tractor is its LED headlights. Maybe it's a testament to how slow these product cycles can be when LED headlights have been a thing in so many areas for so long now. But the prior model here, and the ones that we're selling today, do still have halogen headlights on them in some cases. The LEDs here are going to be a little bit brighter, a little bit easier to see at night, but I'm still going to caution you, if you've got a loader on here, particularly one that's got a brush guard or something, you cover up most of these headlights. So if you're really serious about working at nighttime, work lights up on your roll bar. Really don't have a substitute, but these are going to be a little bit brighter than what the older ones were. Our next improved item is the mower deck that's available for this tractor. Now, I haven't received a deck yet for my LX series machines, so we're sitting here beside a BX series. As large as this tractor is, you can still get a mid-mount mower for it. So a 60 or 72-inch mower deck can be fit underneath the machine. If you're looking for a one machine solution for, say, work around your yard and also mowing, and you don't want an additional power unit in your fleet, you can still set up a tractor this large to be able to do all of those tasks. The mower deck that goes on the LX series tractor is a ground contact mower deck. Unlike this BX one here that hangs from the tractor, the ground contact decks are going to have wheels on all four corners that pull the mower deck across the ground, allowing it to contour the ground independently of the tractor's wheelbase. That's going to give the machine a very good cut despite its size. So it's a nice, hefty, well-designed deck. New to this model year is going to be washout ports. So if you'd like to go and take a garden hose, clip it onto the mower deck and use that water to wash the underside of the deck out between mowings, the new models are going to offer that. I can tell you from using those in the past, they only work properly if you do it regularly. Not something you're going to want to take a chance to do once a year, right? Once that grass is packed down there, it's not coming out. But if you use it every time after you mow, it will keep grass from accumulating underneath your deck and make that metal deck shell last longer. The most significant mechanical change in this tractor is going to be its transmission, and I can't emphasize enough how unusual it is to see any tractor manufacturer improving upon their transmission. As new models come out year to year, those transmissions are very rarely updated, and this one has been for this year, so that's significant and notable. A couple things here to see that the transmission has a 3-range gearbox in it, a high, medium, low. There are competitors in this class that still use a 2-range transmission. And most notably to existing owners today, this transmission is significantly quieter than the one that it replaces. The LX transmission of years gone by did have a whine to it that was a little bit irritating to some people. Now, the noise of all of these machines is usually enough, even in this new model, that you're probably going to want to run it with some kind of headphones on, right? Anytime I'm out of my tractor, I'm wearing Bluetooth headphones listening to music because the noise level is enough that just about the point that it starts to become irritating, right? This one is about 3 or 4 decibels quieter than what its predecessor was. The high-pitched whine is gone from this machine now. It's a much quieter transmission. Personally, it doesn't change the fact for me that I would still be wearing earphones one way or the other, but it is a significant improvement. Along with the new transmission comes a new transmission feature. This one's called Auto Throttle. Now, an electronic variant of this has been up in Kubota's most deluxe Grand L Series tractors for about 10 years now. There's a slightly different mechanical implementation of it here in the LX Series tractors. What Auto Throttle does is it ties your hydrostatic pedal to your engine RPMs. So as you're driving your tractor, it makes it behave a lot more like your car would. So I can sit here with the machine at idle, and as I step on the pedal to move forward, you hear those engine RPMs pick up? Now going in reverse, it doesn't do it when you're going backwards. Only when you're going forwards will those RPMs pick up and give you those engine RPMs that you need for traveling. Now you can easily override this with the manual throttle. This does not shut off. But if you take the throttle and you say set it for 540 RPMs like you were running a rear implement and you're driving, this is not going to mess with your engine throttle now, right? Because you've got a minimum that's going to be set between either the pedal on the floor or the hand throttle. It's a pretty slick feature. Speaking of that throttle too, while we're here, there's also electronic recalls now for those throttle positions. So you can go and set where your 540 speed is at for your engine RPMs, and then simply recall that easily with a button there on the dash. An additional spec bump that this tractor has taken is additional hydraulic flow by the tune of about 10% or so. That hydraulic flow is going to help you out in a couple of different areas. Because you simply have more of it, that means your hydraulics are going to respond more quickly. So cycle times for moving your loader up or down or curling your bucket are just going to move a little bit more quickly when you've got that engine at wide open throttle, making you maybe a little bit more productive because you can cycle those functions more quickly. It's also helpful when you start doing multiple things at the same time. So speaking personally, where I have a tractor with a loader and a grapple on the front of it, it's going to enable you to do things like lift that loader, curl that grapple, and maybe open it all at the same time. When these systems start demanding flow in a lot of different directions, the hydraulic fluid is going to go the path of least resistance, and having more fluid allows it to balance those functions a little bit better, and things tend to be a little bit more responsive with that additional flow. So it should make the tractor a little bit more responsive when some of those common third function attachments are used. Another place the new tractor took a spec bump is back here on the 3-point hitch. The new model lifts about 400 pounds more than what the old one did, allowing it to pick and carry a heavier implement. With 40 horsepower out under the hood, there might be applications now where that's actually going to be helpful to allow you to pick and carry maybe a little bit larger implement than what the older model would. Knowing how these things balance out, I'm gonna caution you a little bit. You start picking up an implement that is over 2,500 pounds here at the pins, where this thing's now rated at, is gonna require at the very least a loader, maybe a loader with a bucket full of dirt, in order to get some of that balance as far out in front of the tractor as possible, because this is now an extremely capable 3-point hitch. More important than the spec, because people very rarely are going to exceed this specification back here, is the adjustability of this tractor. So you have sway bars back here on the back with pins. You have a drawbar back here with places to hook chains onto, heavy duty top link up here, and all the nice adjustable features here on the rear of the tractor. The cab variations of this machine are going to come through with extendable link arms on them that allow you to stretch these out. Although we see most people today putting a quick hitch on the back, which is almost a little bit more functional today with a lot of our quick hitch compatible implements compared to that extendable link arm. So one way or the other, you've got a very flexible, easy to use 3-point on the back of the tractor. There are a number of changes up here in the operator's platform to discuss, but we're going to start with the floor pan itself. This one is a little bit larger than what the older model was, so giving a little bit more room to stretch your feet out, bigger space here for larger boots. The hydrostatic pedal on this is a newer design, a little bit different. I still find that I use these with my toe in the front and I lift underneath and lift up to go in reverse. You can also use this with your heel or your entire foot on top of the pedal. The nice thing about these pedal designs is it allows a lot of flexibility in you finding kind of your most comfortable way of operating this. The motion here is very soft. Kubota's most deluxe tractors are going to use an electronic servo in the pedal to make them very easy to move. This one is still mechanical, but the linkage moves a little easier and more fluid than what the older model that I own does. That's probably a testament to this new and updated transmission and the way that this pedal is working, but it has a nice feel to it. I don't notice additional drag from that auto throttle linkage that's now down there as well. So if anything, it's easier operating than what the old model was. The floor pan itself is nice and open, maybe a little bit less of a hump here in the middle, requiring you to lift your feet up over than what the prior model did. But one thing I don't necessarily care for is the location of the diff lock pedal. This new one now has the diff lock sticking right out of the middle of the floor here, kind of in front of you. Now, on most tractors, that diff lock pedal is back here and operated with your heel. Now, heel operated diff locks aren't always the easiest to use. This is an uncomfortable position to get your foot in. The new one's probably more comfortable and easier to get some force on top of, but it does kind of clutter the platform here. So we've got some more space in some areas, but smack dab right down here is not where I would have chose to put the diff lock pedal, but that's where it remains. My number one pet peeve from my tractor was the latch for the tilt wheel. These all have nice tilt wheels on them that allow you to put them in a comfortable position. Everybody kind of prefers to have their steering wheel in a different place. But the old LX series tractor had a latch that was done in the way that when you were on rough ground and bouncing the tractor around, sometimes your tilt steering wheel latch would pop and the wheel would move into a different position. This one now has a different type of latch on it that you can feel is a much more positive lock-in than what the old one did. So we shouldn't have these wheels drifting around anymore like we did. Another feature change over here is the cruise control. So the old model would have used a very typical pedal latch where you have your pedal pressed down on the floor and then you use something that feels like a parking brake latch down here in order to hold that pedal in place. The newer model now uses a cruise control lever over here on the side of the tractor that allows you to go and pick out that cruise control position by hand and drop it into a numbered slot. That's going to allow you to be able to recall a particular speed if you'd like to, and it's a lot easier to use than reaching down here by your feet to lock in a pedal latch. Another thing I like is the location of the PTO knob. Our old model would have used a lever that you pushed forward in order to gauge the PTO. The new one uses the very typical ubiquitous PTO engagement knob now that we find on most tractors that allows you to turn the knob to turn your rear PTOs on, and then when you want to turn it off, you just bump it in order to let it spin back to place. On the topic of the PTO, this is the smallest tractor now that I have ever seen that has a 540 and 540E selectable PTO. Now what that allows you to do is to run your PTO at the industry standard 540 RPMs, but choose how fast you want your engine RPMs to be running. So if you have in this case, a 40 horsepower engine, but only really need 20 horsepower for the implement that's back on your PTO, you can run this in 540E mode so that you can get the speed out of the PTO that you want, but let your engine run at lower RPMs, potentially saving you a little bit of fuel, but more than anything else for me, noise and vibration, just kind of bringing all of that down in order to be able to kind of make it a nicer operating experience. Common feature up on big agricultural tractors. When we're in machines that are 75 and 100 horsepower, this is very common to see, but it's the first time that I've seen it in a machine of this size, and it's probably a reflection of the sheer amount of engine horsepower that this tractor has. 40 horse in this machine is so much that it's not needed for a lot of those 3-point hitch implements. So having this E option here, I think makes sense in this tractor, maybe even more so than it does in some of the big utility machines. So those are the 13 improvements to Kubota's LX20 series tractor. They really have raised the bar here a lot with all of these improvements. It's very unusual to see new tractors iterated on in such a significant way in the way that this one was done. Usually we're just beautifying things a little bit, right? Throwing on some new headlights or whatever, but there is so much that has gone on in this machine. It's pretty impressive. Looking at the product positioning here, maybe a little bit of my personal opinion on this one. There's cases here when we're looking at the 40 horsepower model, again, an obscene amount of horsepower for this size machine, that if you're thinking that that's the right one for you, do price Kubota's next series up as well, the Grand L60. It's going to be a larger, much more capable tractor than what this one is. If you can have a property that can take a larger machine, you're going to find the price gap between those two being fairly small when we're looking at the fully decked out 40 horse variant of this machine. It is a super powerhouse, right? If you've got that 10-acre property and you want the most powerful tractor that you can manage, this gives you a lot of horsepower in a very small frame and an extremely capable tractor. But if you can afford that larger size chassis, to me that's an upgrade worth making because it's going to give you a larger, more capable machine. But many people don't want that larger size tractor, and that's going to push them into this 40 horse variant in some cases. I think it's really interesting. Great tractor, definitely worth jumping out and getting this seat of. If you've got an older LX series tractor, you're going to like many of the upgrades on this, and we'd be more than happy to talk you through trading one of them out. So if you're shopping for a piece of equipment, you got parts or service needs for a machine you've already got, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at messick's.com.